So I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce you to the idea of the lab practical, since I am not going to be around personally to do that. So the lab practical is going to involve you needing to identify 7 substances based upon their physical properties and your predicted IMFAs and structures that the molecules form. So the first thing you're going to get when you come into class is a table that looks like this. However, it's not going to be blank. There are going to be the identities of the substances that you will have down the left-hand side. I may or may not include the formula, depends upon, or the structure, depends upon what the molecule is. But you're going to know what the 7 substances are. When you go back into the lab, those 7 substances are going to be labeled A through G, I think. Yes, A through G. So what you need to do is you need to test substances A through G, take note of their physical properties, and then compare those physical properties to the properties that you predict these 7 chemicals will show based upon their structure, the type of material that they are, and the IMFAs that they form. So you have experience, you have lots of experience with knowing how molecular substances will behave, with knowing how ionic substances will behave, how metallic substances will behave. So you test something you try to dissolve something in water and it doesn't dissolve. Right away, you know it's not going to be polar. It's going to be nonpolar. It's not, the ionic things are going to dissolve. If it doesn't dissolve, it could be a metal. Okay, so you're going to be able to start narrowing down the possibilities simply based upon the properties that you recognize from the data that you collect. So you will have all sorts of supplies in order to do your testing. You can do melting point, you can do boiling point for ionic compounds, you can do solubility. You can do flame tests, you can do conductivity, you can do precipitation reactions, you can do all sorts of things in order to identify the substances that I've presented to you. Something as simple as what's its state at room temperature. So making those observations and then comparing the different structures and formulas of those molecules are going to help you narrow down those ideas. So you are going to be able to do all of your testing in a group of 4. At your lab, your whole lab table is going to participate in collecting data. So when you're in the lab, you're going to know the materials that you have, and you're going to be able to collect data. So one thing that you're going to do, you're going to set up the pre-lab. You're going to answer all of this stuff in part. You're going to come up with procedures. Notice that you need at least 2 properties to identify or to verify the identity of the substance. So it's not good enough to say that it conducts electricity. You need some other kind of observation. Okay? So 2 pieces of evidence. You're going to create a data table as neatly as possible in order to collect everything. And then you are going to have some analysis questions to do as well. One thing that you want to make sure that you keep track of is in your procedures. You don't have to give me a step-by-step process. If you are going to test solubility in water, simply say that you're going to mix substances A, B, C with water and determine if they are soluble. You are going to test the conductivity using the conductivity apparatus of various substances. So you don't have to give me step-by-step details. I know you know how to do those because we've been through them so often, and I don't want you to spend your time writing up procedures. I want you to spend your time collecting data and doing the analysis. So you're going to collect the data with your lab team after you've come up with procedures and so forth. And so then you're going to have to analyze everything, and you are going to identify elements A through, or substances A through G. You're going to give me the names of the chemical formulas. Make sure I get the name and not the molecular formula. I want the actual name. And then you're going to follow the directions in terms of telling me how you came up with that idea. The last thing that I want to show you about this is the rubric. So notice there is a section for your lab notebook. There's a section for filling out the lab sheets then. Did you fill out the pre-lab idea stuff appropriately? Did you identify the materials appropriately? Did you use good reasoning? So all of that adds up to 100 points, but it's really only going to be 50 points in the grade book. So the lab practical would be 50 points, and then the written part is going to be 50 points. So it'll add up to a 100-point test in total. One thing that I want you to keep in mind, on Monday when you take the written test, there is one question that is going to be kind of the same idea as the lab practical. So you'll get kind of a feel for what you need to do. I'm going to present you with a bunch of data, and you've got to decide which substance belongs to which set of data. Exactly what you're going to have to do in the lab practical on Tuesday. So when you go into the lab, you cannot take any supplies with you in terms of resources, just what you've learned. So make sure you are very comfortable with the kinds of properties that each of these materials are going to show. Make sure you know what ionic compounds will do. I will let you take solubility rules, however, because you don't have to ever memorize solubility rules. Make sure you know what metallic properties do. Make sure you know what molecular polar and molecular nonpolar things do. So that's the kind of information you want to walk into the lab having in your head, because you cannot rely on any papers in order to do that. All right, so hopefully this gives you a little bit of an idea about the lab practical. Just remember, you only need 2 pieces of data, and just because you can do a test doesn't mean you need to. If you use something as simple as it's a liquid at room temperature, that's a piece of evidence, that's a piece of data. So don't feel that you have to go through and do a lot of testing. If you don't need to do solubility testing, don't do it. If you can identify it in other ways, that's fine. So be smart about how you approach your procedures. And once you know the answer to something, walk away from it. Don't kill it. Okay, that's enough. Good luck.